Hours after officially announcing his campaign for the presidency, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went on Fox News' Tucker Carlson tonight and elaborated on what he considers to be America's most pressing issues. Let's listen.
I think that the general theme of my speech was this corrupt merger of state and corporate power, which is turning our country into a corporate kleptocracy, into a system of socialism for the rich, and this kind of a cushy socialism for the rich, and this kind of brutal, merciless capitalism for the poor.
Kennedy did not hold back on his sentiments about the nation's involvement in the Ukraine war either. Let's take a listen.
Americans care about the underdog. They care about that kind of suffering. But the question is, why are we in the Ukraine? Because Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, said that we're there to exhaust the Russians. President Biden has said that we're there to deplatform, to depose Vladimir Putin. And if that's why we're there, and we're killing a lot of Ukrainians as pawns in a proxy war between two great powers. Here's one last thing I would say. Nobody talks about this. There's 14,000 Ukrainian civilians who have died, but 300,000 troops. The Russians are killing Ukrainians at a 7-to-1 to 8-to-1 ratio. They cannot sustain this. What we're being told about this war is just not true.
Powerful messaging, I gotta say. He's been on a roll. His speech really hit the nail on the head of the corporate corruption that I think really motivated a lot of both Bernie voters and Trump voters. He seems to recognize that this is the through line for so many disaffected voters. He says, I give me a sword, I need an army, and it can't just be the party. I need Democrats, Republicans, and independents. I won't pretend to agree with you on every position, but it would make America a safe place to debate your positions, and I will give you an ear and an open mind.
You know, he's polling at, what was it, 14% in the Democratic, among Democratic primary voters, which is pretty good, actually. It's sizable compared to the attention that, for instance, Nikki Haley is getting, despite not having much support at all. She's getting a lot of media attention. He's getting almost none. In fact, I think Fox News was the only media outlet covering RFK Jr. Obviously, he made an announcement, and then he was on Tucker Carlson's show. He wasn't anywhere else. In fact, the rest of the media, the mainstream media, to the extent they want to talk about him at all, it is to warn you not to talk about him. Let's play this clip from Aaron Burnett.
Biden railing against vaccines, too. Even members of his own family are refusing to support him. Jeff Zeleny is out front.
It was a political rally steeped in Kennedy family history, with one critical missing piece: most of the storied Kennedy family. Today in Boston, as he announced a long-shot presidential bid,
I am going to take back this country with your help.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. evoked images of his father and uncle, as he bluntly acknowledged his siblings wish he wouldn't be launching a campaign to challenge President Biden.
There are other members of my family who are not here today.
With a famous political name, he plunged into the fringe of today's politics, railing against the safety of vaccines and what he calls corrupt corporate power in America.
I thought it was funny they say, like, oh, yeah, if his own family's not supporting him. Where were the other Kennedys? And at that moment, they're showing a picture of John F. Kennedy, who is dead. Like, he's not there because he's not alive.
Yeah, well, look, it has been the case that his siblings have co-signed this letter years ago, distancing themselves from some of his feelings about vaccine skepticism. But it is really interesting in that clip, they go on to interview some people who attended the rally, and they ask them the question, what do you think about the fact that his family doesn't even want to be here? The family doesn't even want to support him. They're really going with that line of attack and the vaccine attack.
Dumb line of attack.
And it's really
the family attack.
No, nobody cares that his family's not there. As you pointed out, the kind of relevant political Kennedys are no longer with us. And it feels as though, it feels like a weird, like, tattletale sort of a line. You expect people to prioritize an interpersonal family dispute over other things. One person interviewed later in that Aaron Burnett clip was asked about the vaccine issues, and she said, well, honestly, there's a whole panoply of things that I'm voting on, and I don't have to agree with him on that to want to support him for other reasons. And I think mainstream Democrats who think that that particular line is going to land are really underestimating, one, how much these other issues like the war in Ukraine, domestic policy issues, environmental issues, and the like are motivating voters more. And also the fact that a lot of Americans are, in fact, mad at Donald Trump and Joe Biden for their COVID policies. And RFK Jr. seems to be one of the only politicians who has successfully leveraged a criticism of Donald Trump and the Biden administration both over the vaccine policies.
You shared this tweet from Dan Rather. The press should be careful about covering Robert Kennedy Jr.'s quixotic run for president so as not to amplify his dangerous conspiracy theories about vaccines. That is the approach that I expect the mainstream media to take with him. Actually, if he starts doing better, if he's getting even better poll numbers, they will descend on him with the most gatekeeping kind of, all the reporting will be about how dangerous it is for you to consume news and information reporting about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
It will be that. It will be, and of course, no one would ever say, Dan Rather would never say, it is dangerous and unsafe to cover, President Biden's speech about why we should fund the Ukrainian army for the rest of all time until no one is left alive. You would never say that's dangerous.
Joe Biden has his fingerprints on some of the most destructive policies that have ever come down the pike in American political life, from the crime bill to NAFTA. And it's ridiculous to be using this sort of framing.
Including incorrect things he incidentally said about COVID and vaccines.
Of course. And look, I don't want to downplay either the negative consequences of certain kinds of vaccine hesitancy in California, where RFK Jr., I believe, lives, in that kind of like, he's married, obviously, to a Hollywood actress. Like, in that kind of those social circles, vaccine skepticism is very popular and has led to these outbreaks of horrible diseases like meningitis among children in school populations there, in volumes like we haven't seen since before we had vaccines. And kids are really hurt by this and they die, and that's an important thing. But when you look at all of the issues that are facing Americans, and you put on one side Ukraine, you put on one side environment and the betrayals of the Biden administration with the ConocoPhillips drilling in Alaska, you put all of the existential issues that are affecting the American public, crony capitalism. Did you hear about, by the way, how in the Aaron Barnett segment they said what he calls corporate capitalism, what he calls crony capitalism, as that there's some subjectivity about the corruption of government. And put on the other side, the guy thinks that vaccines cause autism. Like, this is serious. I'm not saying that there aren't serious implications of vaccine hesitancy, but I don't know on what planet you have to live to think that voters are going to take one single issue and that's going to cause them to ignore everything that they know and care about. When you have Joe Biden, he was literally accused of a number of instances of sexual misconduct, and the Democratic Party trotted out every woman from Kirsten Gillibrand to Stacey Abrams to say, nothing to see here, folks. If they were willing to ignore and not investigate, I don't know what happened. Nobody does, except for the people involved. But to shut down the Tara Reade allegations without an investigation like they did, to expect everyone to fall in line, as Joe Biden was saying, fund the cops more, as literally millions of people were in the street in the largest protest movement ever in Black Lives Matter in 2020. To hear him on a leaked phone call to every black leader in the country saying, sit down, sit aside, it's your turn. I'm not going to do George Floyd justice and policing. It's Latinos' turn now. And to expect everyone to fall in line and vote for him regardless, and ignore all that, but to think that, vaccine has...
and especially for Biden, especially on the sexual misconduct stuff. Look, if I had been inclined to vote for Biden, I wasn't, so I didn't have this dilemma. If I was inclined to vote for him, would I have decided not to vote for him because of, for instance, the Tara Reade accusation? Probably not. Probably I don't think at the end of the day there was enough definitive proof to change my mind, even though I found her credible. I like her views. She's had her on the show. All due respect to her, everything, not trying to contradict what she said. But it was a long ago incident, and there wasn't enough evidence for. I could see why you would not change your mind. But Biden's own standard for adjudicating these things, and the general liberal, democratic, progressive standard is believe there does not need to be proof. You believe it's because who would ever lie about this? So it should just be taken as an article of faith. That was how so many of these other Me Too incidents have been approached. That is what Biden literally said.
That's what Kamala said when she was running against Biden with the first accusation.
So, live up to your hypocrisies.
Yeah, the Democratic Party taught voters lesser of two evilism. They exist because of lesser of two evilism. They would not be able to sustain without being able to say to voters, you know, at the end of the day, I know this candidate sucks. I know Hillary Clinton sucks. I know that Joe Biden sucks. But you can't vote for Trump. You can't let Trump win again. So now they should not be surprised when voters, understanding that candidates aren't perfect, and sometimes you got to choke down some beliefs that you don't like, are more than happy to do so when they look at someone like RFK Jr., whose upsides, in many people's view, are going to seem much more significant than his downsides.
Indeed. We'll have more Rising right after this.